Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Office 365 Dev Pulse. I'm your host, Scott Hillier, and today we're going to have a special guest with us, Andrew Connell. Andrew, you there?
I am here. How you doing, Scott?
There he is. I hear him. Maybe we'll see him in a minute. Ah, here he comes. Great. Before we get started talking to Andrew, I just want to make sure that we thank Microsoft for their great support for the Office 365 Dev Pulse. They're our sponsor, and without them, we wouldn't be able to do all the great things that we're doing. So, Andrew, welcome. Andrew is a long-time member of the SharePoint and Office. These days, Andrew is billing himself more as a full stack developer. Lots of time in the saddle with SharePoint, but doing a lot more things with the full stack. Still spending a lot of time with Office 365, the Office 365 APIs, SharePoint Server, Azure, et cetera, and doing some training for critical path training. Lots of videos on Pluralsight. Of course, writing for his blog and tweeting all the time, and doing something called the Microsoft Cloud Show. We've got links to all the wonderful resources where you can find Andrew available for everybody who's watching the show today or watching it recorded. And many of you may know Andrew by his sort of nickname, AC, right? So folks call him AC. And, AC is a decent nickname. It sort of follows the current trend of using people's initials to kind of make up a nickname, right? So Chris Johnson is CJ or Jeremy Thake is JT. Not overly imaginative, right? We could do a little better, right? There's also a trend where you take pieces of people's names and put them together, right? So Deshaun Jackson is Djax, right? So maybe we could call you like Akon or something like that. That might be a little better.
Hey, that
But then
works.
as
That's
I was
the.
thinking about this, that's what?
I said that works because that's actually the ID of my Office 365 tenant.
There you go, Akon. But as I was thinking about this more, I always see that Star Wars stuff in the background whenever we've got you on the webcam. So I started to think to myself, what would be an ideal nickname, like a real nickname, instead of just making up letters and stuff, there are real nicknames like Bullet Head or Pot Roast or something like that, right? So what would be a really good nickname for you? And I was running through all the different Star Wars, and then it hit me.
I'm scared.
C3PO. We'll call you. We're going to call you AC3PO from now on. How's that? There's a real nickname for you.
It started today.
There you go. I probably shouldn't say this, but occasionally people refer to me as Bubblehead. So if you want to get me back, you can use that one.
There you go.
All
There
right,
you go. I
great.
can
So,
call you with a bubble head.
in all seriousness, no. Tell us a little bit about what you've been up to, Andrew.
Yeah, so I've been living the life in Office 365. I mean, I did SharePoint for 10 plus years, and most all of it on-prem. I really enjoyed this working with Office 365, primarily from a development point of view, because as a developer, I don't have to worry about standing up in a VM or an environment or any of that stuff. So it makes my life a heck of a lot easier. Um, the it's a it's just the deployment side is really easy. Plus, I like the fact that the product is always improving. Microsoft is always adding additions and new stuff to it, and so I mostly spend my time not so much around building and extending SharePoint, but building web stuff that relates either to just classic web tools that are going to talk to Office 365 through one of the different APIs that they give us. Do a lot of Azure development. And I also do a lot of development using Office add-ins. And so I guess we'll talk a lot about that today. But I've kind of been branching out as much as I could to try and spend time with away from doing the stuff that I've been doing for so long with .NET. I spend a lot of time working with Angular and the client and doing server-side stuff with Node. And really I went from being someone who absolutely despised JavaScript probably 3 years ago to
Sure.
that's my preferred platform and language, client side, server side, tooling, hands down now. It's all I do is JavaScript stuff.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of us have gone through that transition over the last few years where you sort of thought JavaScript isn't a real programming language. But now when you're very, very deep into it and building enterprise applications, it has a certain elegance. It's true that it does have weaknesses that we're all well aware of, but it has a certain elegance. I'm hip deep in an Angular project right now, and I'm able to build very compartmentalized code. I'm able to reuse and structure, and I can actually find the things I'm working on, even though the project is quite large. So I'm with you on that journey as well. Tell us a little bit about some of the other things you're involved in, like the Microsoft Cloud Show.
Yeah, so I'm a co-host of a podcast, a weekly podcast called the Microsoft Cloud Show, and it's primarily focused around exactly what the title sounds like, the Microsoft Cloud. So that includes Office 365, it includes Azure, but we also talk about the competitive landscape as well. So we talk about AWS and Azure Web Services. We talk about the Google Cloud. We talk about Google Apps. Got a really cool interview coming up with someone who runs a big piece of the Google Cloud that we're going to interview pretty soon. But we just published episode 91 today. We're coming up on episode 100, where we've got a fun little episode scheduled in about 2 months, I would say. But yeah, so I host the podcast, and then I do a lot of I guess mostly my days today are kind of built around some sort of education or training or teaching around the stuff that we've talked about so far. I mean, I do hands-on classes for Critical Path Training, a company that I co-founded back in 2009 with Ted Pattison. I also have a bunch of courses on Pluralsight, and then I do a lot of writing and bunch of sample projects and stuff for both Microsoft and other clients, and build training for those clients as well. So really do a lot, everything around Azure, everything around Office 365. It's funny you were talking about the JavaScript stuff too. I mean, it's something that, I mean, yeah, a lot of us came full circle. I went kind of almost full circle and then deep into it. I love the fact that with JavaScript that I've got one language that I can use all the way from the client all the way down to the server, and my entire tooling and testing and everything is all done and all glued together with the exact same language, using the same development tools too. So, and it works great cross-platform, any platform, work on any laptop you want. So it really makes life really good today. It's a good place for web developers today.
Yeah, it's definitely a good spot to be in. Well, we're going to make use of some of that over the next 45 minutes or so. But the reason that we're here today, specifically among all these different things that we're talking about, is to talk about Office add-ins. So I know that we were talking a little bit before the show, and you were saying that you really felt that Office add-ins represented a great opportunity for developers, not just to make use of their skills, but to really have a chance to advance their career. So tell us a little bit about Office add-ins, maybe for some of the developers that aren't familiar with the concept. What are they, and why should we care about them?
Sure. So it's really, I think that it's something you definitely want to pay attention to. I mean, in the past, what we've been able to do is we've been able to build little components using something called the Visual Studio Tools for Office, or VSTO, VSTO, that we could install into Outlook or Word or Excel or PowerPoint. We could install in all these different environments. And what it would allow us to do is to put some sort of functionality inside of these different Office client apps, which is appealing because you want to make sure that your application, where do we spend most of our time? Most people are using Office in the business world. Most of the people that are of those people are spending a majority of their time in that application. You get an email, you want to be able to act on that email. You want to be able to see information related to that email, like customer information. And what are we doing? We're copying tracking numbers, and we're leaving the place where the data is, and we're going somewhere else to use it. What Microsoft has done is they took this VSTO model, which was very complicated, very kludgy. It was something I never really warmed up to. I know a lot of the people didn't. And they took it from something that was only going to work in the latest version of Office on Windows. And they've kind of went a totally different direction. And they said, what we're going to do is we're going to create this new model. We're going to call it the add-in model. Originally it was called Office Apps, but they changed it to Office Add-ins. And what this new model is it basically says you create a web application, and it lives somewhere. And the only requirement is that it is served up using HTTPS or served up over HTTPS. You then go to an Office client application and you register your web app with that Office client app. And as stuff we'll get into, there's different ways that that application can manifest itself within the custom, within the hosting Office app, Outlook, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, OneNote. They're all coming. All the apps will be covered soon. And then this web app can then run inside, it effectively runs within this hosting Office client app. Now, what's cool about this option is that wherever you have an Office app that supports add-ins, the add-ins will work. So today, let's look at Outlook. That means Outlook, the web app in Office 365 or Outlook.com. It means Outlook on Windows, and it also means Outlook on the Mac for the read forms. The compose forms don't have them on the Mac yet. For Word, same deal. For Excel, same deal. And Microsoft has said that they're going to make it to where these add-ins are supported in the latest versions of Office, whether they're on Windows, whether they're on OS X on a Mac, whether they're on iOS, on an iPad, or Excel for add-ins actually work on an iPad now, whether they're on Android, whether they're on wherever they are in the web versions, they're going to be everywhere. So you can have an add-in that you install one time, or you register one time into Outlook, and it shows up everywhere. And it's really compelling. The reason why I think that it's really compelling is, number one, you can use the same web development techniques and technologies that you use today to build one of these add-ins. You can interact with a hosting Office application through a little JavaScript API. Your application can live and be surfaced and manifested right where your customer is already working on things, right? So I'll show you some of the ones that Microsoft has out today that were published last week or earlier last week, to where you can register a reminder for a meeting, when you get a meeting invite, to have a little reminder pop up on your phone and say, make sure I get that Uber ride to show up to take me to this meeting. Works out really, really well. So it's nice because all the stuff is right there. Why should you care about it? Where is Office installed? Everywhere. There's millions of people worldwide that have Office installed. And there's millions and millions and millions of people inside of Office 365 that have it installed. Now, the latest versions of Office for Windows are the ones that can use these add-ins. So that's Office 2013. All of the Office web clients. Limited parts of Office 2016 for the Mac. That's out today. And some of the apps on iOS can also support it. But Microsoft is working on all of those to get them updated so that we have full, complete coverage of add-ins across the entire Office suite on all platforms.
All right, great. Well, I've been a big believer in Office extensibility for a long time. But I'll echo your experience in that, if I did something that I thought was cool, I recall just a while back that I had created a Visto add-in for Word that connected to a CRM system, and it allowed people who were putting together sales documents to stay in Word and pull the CRM data from the system, and fill out templates, right? So to me, this made a lot of sense, the idea of staying in the Office productivity environment and just pulling the line of business data to you. But whenever I would teach them in years gone by, I could never really get a lot of people excited about them, because they would say to me, well, Scott, that's wonderful, but we won't have the latest version of Office for 3 years. Mm-hmm. So we can't use this technology. And then every time, a new version of Office would come out, you'd get excited about the latest development, and they'd say the same thing. We won't have that for 3 years. So when it comes to the Office add-ins, it really changes that whole story, I think, and it makes this extensibility available to many, many more people today. Mm-hmm. So with that said, let's take a look at an example so people can see what you're talking about. You've got some that you're going to show us that we're just going to look at as consumers, right, as users of the add-in to get started.
Absolutely, yeah. So let me jump over and let me share my screen with you, and let me fire this up. And if you would let me know when you can see Outlook up, and don't worry, this is not Outlook that is my email. This is a sample mailbox that I have, so you're not getting anything special.
Okay, we can see it.
Okay, so This is the standard Outlook. This is the web client, and this you would get these same add-ins. They work on Windows for Outlook today using the Outlook 2013. What they've done when you want to go get an add-in, the way you're going to do it is you come over here to the gear at the top right, click on the gear, and you pick Manage Add-ins. And then from there, you can pick add-ins or you can sideload add-ins that you've created. So with this, I could come over here and I could click on the little plus and say I want to grab one from the store, go to the store, and it will show me a list of all the different add-ins that are out there, and I can look for all these different ones and grab them. So for example, PayPal. I mean, I have a guy that helps us produce our podcast, and he sends me invoices via PDF. I open the PDF up, I see it right there. I just pay him straight from within Outlook, but it's using my PayPal account. I'm not even going to leave Outlook, open up a browser, and go into PayPal. So that's pretty cool. There's some other really cool ones in there, things like DocuSign and some other ones. I want to show you some of these ones, though. I'll show you two really cool ones. In the context of Outlook, when you create a new email, you have the option here to have add-ins. So I have a couple add-ins that I've installed. The My Templates one, that's one that Microsoft has included by default. The Microsoft Buildings, you're going to have to forgive me. That one is an old one that I was developing for or showing off. It was a Microsoft sample that they've got up on dev.office.com. So I can't show you that one. But this Boomerang one, this is cool. So anybody that's on Gmail knows what Boomerang is because it's been out there for years. What this does, if I'm going to send an email here to Scott, right? And I'll just say Scot at something.com. Won't share your email with everybody there, Scott. But what you see here is that with this one, with Boomerang, what this will do, I'll go over here and let me authenticate. And I will then grant Boomerang access to my mailbox. And what this is going to allow me...
You did something very quick there that's important is you consented to allow this app to do things on your behalf, right?
That's exactly right. I did it pretty quick, but yeah, basically it said Boomerang wants to have access to your calendar. It wants to have access to your mail. It wants to be able to send mail on your behalf. And those are things, what that's doing is that I'm not giving Boomerang my username and password. I'm giving it access to do those things just like if I was connecting an app to Facebook. So I'm going to skip the whole little, this little reminder, a little helper thing it's got here. But basically what this does is if I want to send an email to Scott, like, hey, please review my invoice because you got to pay me up, Scott. If you don't respond within 2 days here, what I can say is remind me if Scott doesn't respond to this email in 2 days if there's no reply. Or I can say send it later, like in 2 days, send it to Scott. Or I can say let me share my availability here. So I want to set up a meeting with you, Scott. So when are you available? Let me just share my availability for the next 3 days and insert that in the email. And what you'll see here is it'll insert a little HTML table. It's taking a second for it to render. And it's showing you my availability. Now, again, this is my sample mailbox here. So I have no meetings in this mailbox, but I wish my availability looked like this over the next 3 days. Or I can share my schedule. So this is a cool little add-in. This thing is free. Right? This is absolutely free, and you can go get this today. This came out last week. That's what we call a compose add-in. So that's one that you can add when you're actually creating an email. Let me show you another one here. This one's pretty cool. This one also came out last week. Let's say I get an invite here for a meeting. So this is an invite from Rob Walters, and he says we're going to go have dinner at Sparks Steakhouse in New York. You ever been there?
Oh, that's a great spot. In fact, last time I was there, some of the Sopranos cast members showed up.
Oh, fantastic.
It was great. They were loving it. They were loving it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I do too. It's a great place. I'm a little partial to a place down in Brooklyn, but that's okay. So here what this one's going to do is this is my Uber ride reminder. So if everybody knows what Uber is, it's basically like a taxi, but it's much nicer than a taxi. What this one's going to do, and I can't show you the full experience here, because what this will do is that if I can go in and I can plug in my phone number, and I set a ride reminder, what this will do is that when up before my meeting, it'll send me a text to my phone. It'll say, hey, don't forget, you've got this meeting in, say, 30 minutes or an hour, whatever it thinks it needs to give me a kind of a warning for, based on what the Uber load is like that at that time, plus based on where my location is. It'll send me a thing and say, don't forget about your meeting, swipe to ride. And so I swipe on my phone, I unlock it, It goes right into the Uber app. It automatically creates a new ride request based on the location that I'm at, and it pre-fills the location of where I'm going with the address on my calendar. That is really cool.
That's excellent. Excellent. That really shows you the power.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to using that one next week when I'm in at a conference, the SP TechCon conference in Boston next week. That'll be really cool.
Yep.
Yes, these are just two sample ones that I just wanted to show you real quick here, but it's showing you working straight inside of Outlook. And I'm going to show you some other stuff here a little bit later about some custom ones that I've created and show you one working inside of Excel.
Okay, great. Well, why don't we bounce out of the screen share for a minute here and talk a little bit about creating our own. So that gives people the idea of what it's like to use an add-in, to be a consumer of that. But as developers, of course, that's not good enough for us. We want to be able to write our own. So let's talk a little bit about the current state of Office add-in development. So if I'm somebody who hasn't done Office add-in development and I want to get started, how would I do that?
Okay, so this, to me, this is one of the most, this is one of the easiest kinds of Office development that you can find today. And when I say that, before anybody rolls their eyes at me, or actually you've already done it by now, but here's the thing. In the past, building Office add-ins was not easy. Doing the Visto add-ins, that was not easy. But today, it is one of the easiest things you could possibly do. So Visual Studio has tools baked in. If you have Visual Studio 2013, you install the Office add-in, the latest Office developer tools, and it will give you the ability to say, File, New Project, Office add-in. What that will do is that's simply going to create two projects for you. One project is just a standard ASP.NET web application, right? If you want MVC, that's cool. If you don't want MVC, you want web app, it doesn't matter. It's totally up to you. It's just a website, and it does nothing else. It's got a single NuGet package that's been added to it that's got a JavaScript file called office.js. Now, what that is that's the thing that you're going to use. That's the API that you're going to use to have your app talk to the host application. So, for example, that Uber one had the ability to go in and grab the time and date for the meeting request and the location for the meeting request, and that's all it needed. The rest of it was just a little website, a little web app that's running on the Uber servers, and it's registering all the stuff with Uber. The other project that Visual Studio creates is simply a project that holds an XML file. And that's the thing that tells Office about your add-in. It tells it, is it a mail add-in? Is it a task pane add-in for Word or Excel or PowerPoint? Or is it a content add-in? Meaning, is it something that lives inside of a Word document or an Excel workbook? That XML is not only going to tell it what kind it is, it's going to tell it what kind of permissions it needs. Like, should it just be able to read or write to it? And it's also going to tell it when should it be activated, and when it is activated, where's the web application living that should be loaded inside of that little box inside of Office. So it's really, really simple. You just file a new project and you're off to the races. Visual Studio's got some great tooling around it.
Okay, and we've got some links to some references for folks to go ahead and get started. And we probably wouldn't be doing our job right if we didn't mention dev.office.com. So dev.office.com is really the place for Office developers to go and get information and get started. And furthermore, I always like to remind everybody that if you go to dev.office.com, you can sign up for the Office 365 Developer Program. And when you sign up for the Office 365 Developer Program, you can get a free Office 365 Developer tenancy, which will allow you to do a lot of the wonderful things that we're doing here on the show today. So that's a good place for everybody to go and get started, dev.office.com.
Yep.
Okay. So
I'm sorry. I was going to tell you one. I was going to tell you one other thing too. Let's say, for example, that you want to be able to go build an add-in. I told you how to do it with Visual Studio. There's another way you can do it that is super easy. If you just go to napaweb.com. What that is essentially it's the Visual Studio Online experience, a web-based experience for doing code, where you can sign in with your Microsoft account, your MSA account, or it might be known as a Live ID, and you can create a new Office add-in. And right from there, you can hit the little play button, and it will deploy it right inside of Outlook and let you test it. It'll deploy it inside of Excel. It'll deploy it inside of Word to let you test it. So you can actually build an Office add-in and I'm going to take this way to the extreme, with just a Microsoft account login, an internet connection, and an iPad. You could totally build an Office add-in that does that stuff, and you just type in the code right inside the browser. You can even take that add-in offline and upsize it to Visual Studio to add additional logic and stuff to it.
Right, and we've got the link for getting started with Napa and Office add-ins also for the folks that are watching the show. So yeah, you're right. It's really silly easy to get up and running, and dev.office.com also has a bunch of exercises and labs that people can work to get rolling on that as well. Okay,
yeah,
great. So let's say I'm bought into this whole thing, right? Talk to me a little bit about my architecture and design options.
Sure. So again, it's just a web app. So you really can choose any web technology that you want to choose. You can choose ASP.NET, and you could use MVC. You could use web applications. I like to use these days. I mean, I'm actually building Office add-ins on a Mac using VS Code, and I'm doing some things for Microsoft right now to make that a little bit easier. Like for example, I'm building a Yeoman generator so that you can just go to the command line, type Yo Office add-in, ask you a few questions, and it stubs out a scaffolding for a web project the same way Visual Studio does. So you can choose. You're basically going to choose first what's the server side technology that you want to use. Be it ASP.NET, be it Node, be it PHP, Ruby. It doesn't matter. You choose whatever you want to choose. The other thing that's cool about it though is that you really don't have to have any server side code with this, because everything's going to run in the browser. And so if you want, you could build an application that is 100% client side and does everything all inside the client, just using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. With that being said, you even have an option to build an application, like an Angular-based application, as an Office add-in. Those are the two that I'm going to show you as a demo at the end. That's the way I like to do it, because I don't like this. You don't want your users to have this kind of post-back experience of the add-in and seeing pages kind of refresh. You want to see a live kind of an application, because if they're inside of Outlook Web or Outlook on the client, the application isn't refreshing. You're seeing parts of the page kind of change and get manipulated based on the data and the actions the users are taking. So you got to build you got to choose your web tech both on the server side, your web tech on the client, and kind of run from there. Now the next thing, obviously, you can choose additional things like maybe you want to use TypeScript instead of just using plain old JavaScript. I like to use TypeScript. I think I'm more productive as a JavaScript developer using TypeScript. The other thing, though, that I really think you want to take some time thinking about is you want to think about how you're going to design it. And when I say design, I mean like the UX, the user experience. The ones that I'm going to show you at the end, I'm using a design language called Material Design, which is actually from Google, which has got a very similar kind of feel as the Metro or modern design language that Microsoft uses. But it's not the exact same. I'll talk a little bit about that, though, about how things are going to get better in that sense. But in my mind, and this is true not just for Office add-ins, but for any kind of application I'm building that integrates with Office 365, I am of the opinion that you want your application to look and to feel and to behave as much like Office 365 and the Office clients as possible, because you don't want your user to open up an app and have all of the UI controls look different than the thing that they just came from. It's right, sure. Frankly, as a developer, from a user experience, it's challenging. But as a developer, I'm selfish. The last thing I want to do is train my end users. If they're coming from 365, then they know how to use 365. And frankly, if they don't know how to, that's not my problem. That's somebody else's problem.
Right. Yeah, well, you don't want the experience to be shocking. You don't want to go from, nice corporate blue with a certain set of controls to some kind of pink and green thing that has everything laid out in some way that you've never seen before. Exactly,
like the Uber one, the old drop downs. Those look like the same kind of drop downs you get from the new option inside of Outlook and those things. So you want to make sure your design language looks very, very similar. So so I think you want them to look very much like Angular, not like Angular. You want to make them look very much like Office 365, and how you do that, it's really up to you.
Great. So you have one that you can share with us?
Sure. Why not? I got two of them. So let me switch back to the demos again. I'll switch back to sharing my screen. So let me know again when you can see my Outlook up again. Let's see. Hold on. Let's see. Okay, there we go. Sharing is going now. So let me see if you can see Outlook again. Okay.
Yeah, we're there.
All right. So let me first fire up my web server here for this Outlook one. Server. Okay. So this is just a little. This application is actually running on my local machine, but I've installed it inside of my Outlook experience. Now, the two I'm going to show you here, I've actually have hands-on labs for these. They were written. I wrote them for the Microsoft Virtual Academy training for Microsoft, and in the links we have a link to the Outlook one for Angular using Angular and the Excel one using Angular. These are the two I'm going to show you now. So if you're interested in these, you can go run through and you can see hands-on labs about how to build these out yourself. So this one, what this one does is that, let's say for example that you get an email from someone and it's got maybe some people's names in there, and what you want to do is you want to check to see, hey, these people that are inside this email, I wonder if they're already in our CRM system. So what this add-in does is it's looking at the body of this email and it's taking every single full word, so every word that starts with an uppercase letter and is surrounded by spaces or by punctuation, and it says that's a candidate for being someone's last name. And so what it did is, and I'll show you what the code looks like in a minute, it said, well, hey, it may be this add-in that I've created called Customer Lookup, because there are potential last names inside this email, like you can see here, Margaret Peacock, or a little bit farther down, I've got one, let's see, where is it? Here's Nancy Devolio. These people are inside of a REST API inside of the Salesforce, inside of my CRM system that I talk to. So here it's activated my add-in, says it's available to you, and when I click on it, what it does is it sends those names over to my web application. It's an Angular app, so that now what I can do is I can actually click on one of these different names and I can see some details about this person right inside the email. There's no taking this person's name, selecting their name out, going over to Salesforce, doing a search for it and finding their name. Right. And none of that stuff. It's much cleaner. So I can see these different people inside of this application. And you see here, because it's Angular, there's no page refresh or anything. It's got nice little transitions and stuff like that. Again, this one's using the design language Material Design and the add-in for Angular called Material Design. So I can actually click on these different names and see these different people really easily.
Yeah, that looks great.
Show you, yeah, so that's one that I've created here. I'll show you another one that I've created. Let me shut my web server off real quick, and I'll fire up the Excel one. Oh, not installed. That's okay. Let that finish, and I'll go Node Server. I'll come back over here and let me open up. Where's Excel? All right. So this one, let me go create a new Excel workbook. Excuse me. Now with this one, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to say I want to insert a new add-in inside my workbook. So with here, I'm going to click on this add-in. I'll see an add-in here called the Invoice Creator. So what this one's going to allow me to do is it's going to allow me to select products that are available. Let me get rid of the ribbon here, make a little bit more real estate.
Andrew, I want to make sure I jump in here for just a second. If I haven't told the folks who are watching yet, if you want to go full screen on these demos, there's a little icon in the upper right-hand corner that has the 4 arrows that's full screen. So I can see them fine in my little window here, but if anybody who's watching wants full screen, you can do that. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, they're showing up great on my 27-inch monitor over here, so it's great. I don't know if you can see that.
One of the advantages of being a developer, you get the big monitors and more than one.
You do, but see, you're getting the weird effect here because I got my camera sitting right up here, and you're way over here on the far left-hand side. So that's why it kind of looks. It works for me though because it looks like I'm looking at you because you're just anyway. Okay, so here, this one, what this one does, this little task pane.
This way, then, right?
There we go. Hey, man, give me. Wait, is it? There we go. High five. Oh, other way.
High five.
Yeah. All right. Maybe our football teams will do better this year. All right. So here with this one, what I can do. You don't have any faith, do you? Let's see. Let's find a category of where
another discussion, and we'll need beer for that.
Let's see if I can find a product here, a product category. Tokyo Traders. There's some in there. Okay, so this one, Tokyo Traders has two things. So from here, I could search by one of my suppliers. I could then search by a category of things that they have. So condiments, no, don't have any condiments. Let's just go back to Tokyo Traders. And from here, I can then check off the different items that I want to add to my spreadsheet, and then I'll just say add products. And what it will do then is it writes these things out right inside of my spreadsheet. Now, it's amazing how easy this stuff is to create. Like this one right here is pretty simple. I actually am creating one, I guess kind of going back to football. I have a fantasy football draft coming up this weekend, and it's a big auction league, and so we have to keep track of everybody's budget and stuff. I've actually been creating one. I've spent about 4 hours where now I select someone's name inside of a spreadsheet. I come over and pick the team, and I click draft, and I put the amount they paid for them. It writes them to another worksheet, and we have that one up on a big screen TV where everybody else is drafting, so everyone can see the draft going on live. So let me show you the code behind these guys.
That's great.
Yeah, it's pretty easy. It's only taking about 4 or 5 hours to build it. Okay, so I'll kill this web server here. Now let me show you the code for these guys. Where is it? Right here. Okay, so I've got 2 of them here. Let me show you the Excel one, since that's the one we were just in a second ago. So with this one, all the code is inside this SRC folder right here. And the app that loads is just this index.html. So this is just standard HTML stuff. It's if anybody's done Angular, you see the standard jQuery and Angular stuff in here.
Okay, so now you're in code, not Visual Studio, right?
That's correct. Yeah, I'm using Visual Studio Code. I work on a Mac, so I don't have Visual Studio. Love this new editor they gave us, but let me show you instead of trying to teach.
So just for the folks who may not have seen it yet, just give us 1 minute on what code is.
So Visual Studio Code is it differs from Visual Studio in the sense that Visual Studio is an IDE, an integrated developer environment, wizards and tool panes and dialogues and all that stuff, and designers mostly. What Visual Studio Code is it's an editor, meaning you just work straight with the code. So on the left-hand side, I've just got my folder structure right here. I've got my code over here on the right-hand side. And even if I want to modify any settings, all the settings I have to set are right over here. You do it all just in JSON. There's no like going file tools, all that kind of stuff.
Right. So very close to the bone.
Yeah, very close to the bone. Very, very lightweight. It's got good ways of launching apps for you and attaching debuggers. You can debug Node.js applications or the ASP.NET 5 core CLR cross-platform stuff. You can do that today.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you're interested, go to code.visualstudio.com. It's pretty cool. All right, so in working on this add-in, what I don't want to do is I don't want to go through and show you all the Angular stuff and try and teach Angular in the next 20 minutes. So instead, let me just show you that all I had to do to make this application talk to Office 365 or talk to the Office app. So first, the web app, this is just the standard HTML page. It's going to get loaded at first. And what I'm doing is I'm loading in this office.js file. That is the API that I use for my app to talk to Office. Okay. Same JavaScript file that I use for everything, for Word, Excel, Outlook. Now, if I come over here inside of my module here, this is the thing that loads up my Angular application. The one thing that you have to do here is you have to, within 5 seconds, you have to call this method called office.initialize. Now, what that's doing is it's essentially telling Office that when Office goes to load your application, your web app, you have to tell it within 5 seconds that I've loaded. If you don't, then Outlook or Word or Excel, they don't think that your add-in is working. And so they show a graceful little error message to the user saying this add-in is broken, because Microsoft doesn't want you to think that Outlook is broken. They want you to know that this add-in is broken. So
yeah, I've experienced that myself in the early days when we were first learning this model. My add-in would run, but I had to keep reloading it.
Yep, and it's a pain. So with this one, if anybody that's done Angular, I mean, what you're seeing me do, you're seeing me bootstrap the application a little bit differently than what we used to do. Usually we're doing something like going into the HTML file here, and let's just say in the body, I'd be doing something like data-ng-app equals the name of the app right here. You can't do that if you're with an Office add-in, because Angular is going to clobber the Office JS, and Office JS is going to clobber Angular. So instead what you do is you do it more like this, where you bootstrap it to where you find something on the page, like I'm just going to the container object, which is my body object, and I'm attaching my Angular app call that you see I'm defining right up here as app.xls.
Got it. And I see you're just doing it in the config.
Yep, just doing the config. So the next piece is, how do I talk to Office? So the way I'm doing that is I have this thing over here called the product service, or let's see, it's in my, is that where it is? I thought I had one called Office service. Let me just double check. No, it's not here. It's going to be, is it here? Where's Office? Hold on just one second. I just blinked. Where is it? Oh, here we go. So this one right here, when I click on my Add Products button, so remember we clicked on that and added 2 things to the spreadsheet. What that does, all this code does, is it's just walking through my my UI, and it's going to get all the things you've checked off. So once you've done that, what I'm then going to do is I'm going to say Office, get a context to the current Office document, and then I'm going to go to all my bindings, which in this case here, there's a bunch of different options you can have. You can have ranges and tables and all that stuff. What I'm saying is I'm going to add from a named item. So I'm saying go from whatever cell A1 to cell E, and then based on the number of items that I have. So I've got a little table that I've created. I'm creating a matrix, and I'm giving it an ID called invoice line items. And once that happens in my callback, I'm going to say, assuming that I've actually had a successful, connection there to get that to attach to the Excel, I'm going to say, let's go attach this thing here. Go to my bindings, and then the ID called invoice line items, which you see I declared up here. And I'm going to say, asynchronously go set the data, this spreadsheet data. So you see here, there's an array that I've created up here. And I'm going to write that out. And you have a couple different coercion types. In this case here, I'm saying write out a matrix of data. When that's done, it's going to write out my data to my spreadsheet. So that's all I had to do to write to the spreadsheet. Really cut and dry, really simple. The Outlook
all
one.
All JavaScript, all straightforward.
Yep. So let me show you the Outlook one, because this one's a little more interesting. So if I switch over here to the Outlook one, let's see, that's going to be right down here. Same deal with this guy. All the same stuff. Same thing with loading the Angular application. Just down here, I want to make sure I call office.initialize within 5 seconds of my app loading. So that's going to be okay after I do the configuration and all that stuff. Down in here in the services, I've got a thing called the Office service. So what happens is when my application loads, what it's going to do is it's going to get candidates from email. So that's one of the properties that I have. So I need to go get all the people out of the email. So what it's going to do here, this is all the code that I need to get this done. What this is going to do is it's going to look at the current email. So it's saying Office, it's casting the current item as an item to read. That's an email item to read. That's different from an item to compose if it's an email I was drafting. And I'm going to do that by looking at the current item that I have selected in Outlook. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, look at that email, and I'm going to call a function called getregexmatches.possiblename. Now you're wondering, what the heck is that? But let's just, for now, just know that that's giving me back an array of strings. Those are all the potential names that I'm going to have, right? This function is going to be used by my customer service. What that does is that's going to go back, and that's going to say, look up all the customers, and it gets this array of all these different people, and it's going back and looking them up against a static JSON file. So I'm not talking to a real CRM system. It's kind of a dummy CRM system.
Yeah, but it's just looking for matches.
Right. So how am I doing that? This is really where the magic's happening. How am I getting all the people out of the email? Well, the way I'm doing that is the one piece I haven't shown you yet, and that's going to be the XML file that defines the add-in that I'm going to install inside of Outlook. And that's this customer lookup file. So let's take a look at this for a second. This one shows that here it's an Outlook, it's a mail app that I'm creating. I've got a unique ID for it because, hey, we're Microsoft, so we love GUIDs. I've got a provider name for this. I've got a locale that I've set up for this. I can have these things be multilingual, and I can have them be apply resources to them to have support different languages. There's the display name. That's what was showing up in the little area between the body and the header of my email. There's a description. There's a pretty little picture that I want to show up when you go to install it or when you go to buy it. What host does it work with? This is a mailbox. The other options you can put here are things like a document or a workbook or a presentation or a notebook. Those are things for like Word and Excel and all that. Those are good when the type equals task pane or content. I'm going to skip a couple things here and just kind of explain let me show you what this piece is right here. The form settings, what that's doing is that's saying that I'm creating a form. In this case here, I'm looking at the item read form. So the two options here are item read and item compose. So a compose form when I'm creating an email or reading an email. And it says, hey, when you're in a Office Outlook desktop client, then I want you to load the add-in at this URL right here. That's the one I was hosting locally, and the height of it will be 200. I can have not just a desktop settings here, I can have three other options. I can have phone, two other options. I can have phone, and I can also have tablet. So I can define a different behavior and look and feel for my add-in based on the different form factors of the different apps. Because they show, Microsoft shows them in different ways. And then finally, the last bit here, this is the part where the magic happens. I'm simply saying to Outlook that when they installed my app, it prompted the user. It says this app wants to be able to, or add-in wants to be able to read the email. And it got that from this permission that I'm defining right here. It's then creating a rule collection to where it's saying, and together these rules, put them together. Make sure that the item is an email or a message and that the form is of type read. And then there's a bunch of different options where I can say read when the email has a specific value in it, when you see like a phone number or an email address. In this case here, I'm saying look for where the item has a specific regular expression in the body field. You can do body as text or body as HTML. Look for where you find something with this regular expression. That regular expression basically says look for a full word that has starts with an uppercase value. And then I'm going to expose that as a regular expression group called possible name. So when I went back in that Office service, I said, get all the regex matches for the group called possible name. And that's what came from that XML file.
Right. And this is really powerful because basically you can search that email body for anything that's meaningful. If you have a certain format for order IDs or customer IDs or what have you, you can search the body looking for those and then take action based on it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can do anything I want with those. You have access to who the email's from, the to, the from, the subject, and the body of the email. You got and some of the headers as well. And when you're composing, same deal. You can even write out the subject and stuff like that. So you got a lot of access to it. The code for the Office side of it is actually really simple. To be honest, when I had to go build one of these the first time, I dreaded it. I was scared to death. I was like, man, this is going to take forever. I went in and did it and was like, that's it. The two hardest things with this is, number one, the website has to be hosted at an HTTPS endpoint, otherwise the Office client will not load it. And then the other thing that was hard, specifically around Angular, was this bit that I have highlighted right here. And I've talked to Microsoft, and they're working on how to fix that. It kind of clobbers it, so they're trying to fix that stuff.
Well, that's great. That's great. I think you've definitely shown us not only how to get started with it, but how easy it can be. Let's bounce out of this now and talk about how to move forward here.
Sure.
So thinking about the future, right? So here's where we are now. Here we've built something, but what types of things as developers should we be looking for as this technology progresses? What's coming from Microsoft?
Absolutely. I think the first thing that we're really going to be looking forward to this is watching add-ins show up in all of the different places where Office is being installed today. So we have Office on Android, we have Office on iOS, we have it on Mac OS, and we also have it on Windows and in the web. We want add-ins in Outlook, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, OneNote. We want it in all of those applications in all of those different platforms. Right now, it's all Windows. It's also web, and then it's some OS X and some iOS. We want to get that across. Once it's pervasive across all of them, the story is much, much better.
Right. So everywhere there's Office, every device that has Office, that's where we want our add-ins to run.
Exactly. Yeah. Some of the other things too that we're looking for is that Microsoft is also looking to improve the APIs and giving us more capabilities to do things to get much more full fidelity from what we could do with Visto. So there are some V2 JavaScript APIs coming for Word and Excel to do some really compelling and powerful things. Like with Excel, we could do visualizations. And what you're going to be able to do with these is these APIs are very different from what I was just showing you a second ago, in the sense that they follow much more. For the SharePoint developers, you'll be familiar with the concept of like obtaining a context and then loading objects and then executing asynchronously.
Interesting.
It's because I'm personally not a fan of going back to this seesaw model, but the reason that they're doing it does make sense. It's because when you do stuff, everything is asynchronous, and you don't want to do like 50 things asynchronously. You kind of want to batch them together and do them all as one. And sure, that's the model that they gave us.
Well, that's always been the big strength of CSOM, is that it handles batch operations better than REST.
Yeah, it does. I mean, and you can do batch with REST, but again, this isn't REST, right? This is you're talking to an API of an application that's living. It means, like, if you're running an Outlook client, there's no REST API that you're talking to on Windows. So I get what they did. I mean, I talked to them about it. I'm like, yeah, I'm not a fan. And so, of course, what they did, they went right back to me and they said, well, how would you do it? And I'm like,
yeah, right.
I don't know. So I don't know. But that's going to be coming with Windows, with the Office 2016 for Windows, which is coming out in the next few months. It's in preview now, and you can try that stuff out today. But we'll see that first in the Windows client or Windows platform, and then we'll see it in some of the other platforms too. So that's a big thing that's coming. Another thing, though, that's coming is something called the Office UI Fabric. So I touched on the whole thing about material design. You want your app to look like the hosting Office app. What Microsoft has done is they're building a implementation that we can use that contains all of the same. I shouldn't say all. Most of the same controls that we're used to using in Outlook and Word and Excel and Office 365 and SharePoint, like drop downs and buttons and toggles and tables and lists and all that kind of stuff, and all the same styles. So we're going to be able to incorporate that inside of our app. So instead of me using material design for these two add-ins I showed you, I would have wanted to use the Office UI Fabric. So it looks like to the end user, when they use my add-in, it looks like it came as part of Excel. They didn't go get some custom thing. That's what I want.
Yeah, that sounds great.
So I've seen that. I've kind of got that to some preview kind of people that are out there. Let's just say it's coming soon. It might come in a month that rhymes with Coquimber. So I don't know. You maybe have to figure out that one, but it's coming soon. Yeah, keep an eye on that one. It's really cool. They've done a really good job with that. But it's not going to have everything right out of the box. I would expect, of course, the one thing that everybody's probably going to ask for is like the people picker. Is that going to be there? I don't know. But at least I got toggles and all the other stuff there. I'm happy with that.
Sure.
So
sure,
that's the stuff I'm looking forward to over the next like 2-3 months with this.
All right, great. Well, I think just the overview of what we've gotten here for anybody that wasn't thinking about Office add-ins before they were watching this certainly should be thinking about them now, not only as an end user, but as a developer. As I think you had pointed out earlier, just it's a great opportunity for developers. There's a lot of expanding future in this particular kind of development. Lots of people who are candidates to use this, and a store where these add-ins can be sold, right? So I think you've given us a lot of really good reasons to care about it. So I want to thank you, Andrew, for spending the hour with us and talking about Office add-ins. It's a big plus.
Absolutely.
Also, before we go again, I just want to give a big thank you again to Microsoft for sponsoring. Anything you want to close with before we knock off?
Not a whole lot. I mean, I guess I saw 1 or 2 questions show up in the chat. The one that I did see, someone's asked about, what about prohibiting tracking or advertising in your add-ins? Let's just be clear about one thing. When you want add-ins to go into the store, they have to go through a verification process. So you got to follow Microsoft's rules to get add-ins in the store where other people can go download them. However, with that being said, you can build add-ins. You can sideload them into your Outlook. You can put them inside of your app catalog and install them into your Excel. But that's what you would do for your enterprise. And so you're in control there. So they're not going to do anything to block you from doing any of the stuff with your stuff. But stuff that they do that you publish in the catalog, they've got to track that. But I mean, they're web apps. So I can do Google Analytics or do any kind of like, Azure app analytics or application insights to watch my app. So it's their web apps. You want to see how people are using your applications and to make them better.
Okay. All right. Great. Well, so at this point, we've reached the end of our time, though, but we've got references, as I pointed out earlier, for everybody for all the things that we had talked about. Lots of links available to you. And don't forget to sign up for the next DevPulse show, which will be a couple of weeks from now. And this recording will also be available up on IT Unity as well. So with that, again, Andrew, I want to thank you for spending the hour with us, and we'll see everybody next time.
Well, thanks a lot, Scott. It's been fun.
You bet.